If I'm looking at it, I'm taking like a long form piece of content and I'm trying to repurpose it into different channels.
And then the AI boogeyman that we're all talking about. How are you using AI right now for your content marketing?
So I think AI is a great thought partner. I would not use AI for content personally.
Welcome to the Digital Accomplice Podcast. Today we're joined by Paul Campillo, who is a B2B expert with a focus on branding and content. So welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
So I always like to start out with a nice, easy one. What would you say would be kind of a recent content marketing win that you've enjoyed?
Okay, well, I mean, it's kind of an unusual story. So when I first started the last startup I was in, it was in the e-commerce space, AI tool for e-commerce brands. And when I joined, we had about 24 to 25 paying subscribers. And of course, what I'm trying to do is trying to figure out like what's the angle here, what's the thing that's really going to get us out there. And I believe I was a little bit too new to really have this, so I ended up having this conversation with a guy who basically runs these events. His company runs these events, and they're connected with all the major retail brands in the space: Estee Lauder, Abercrombie and Fitch, H&M. Everyone's there. Um, and I'm sitting here trying to impress him about the AI tech that we have because I'm trying to get us on this list called the Lead 100, and it's basically the 100 startups that are innovative in the space and that everyone should be paying attention to. Uh, Essentially, nothing worked. Okay, this was in 2023 when all this went down, and we ended up going to the event, sponsoring a booth, and all that. Didn't matter. We weren't featured on the list, and that's okay. There's something needs to change here. But whenever I'm starting in a new company, I'm always trying to look for the big idea, because from the big idea, you're going to have all these other ideas that are going to come from it. All your evergreen content, all the major thought leadership you're going to have is really going to spring from this one great big idea, right? So I was really just trying to discover it, and I think I found it not long after the event, maybe a couple months after the event. And so I started working on it, wrote a white paper, built a landing page, all the rest. The next year, I have a conversation with the same guy. And we get on a call, and he gets straight to the point. He's like, "What's new?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have this white paper and I have this landing page. Just take a look at it." He looked at it. We were on the call for about 8 minutes. He gets off the call. He's like, "Okay, I think it's good enough." Next thing you know, we're on the list. Next thing you know, our brand was featured in the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square.
Not too shabby. That's a pretty big win.
Yeah, it was a good win. And, it was all about this big idea around the technology. And and I knew if I wrote it in such a way or presented it in such a way that people would gravitate to it. So clients gravitated to it. Obviously he did. Conversation was like the shortest I ever had with this guy. And yeah,
That's
was
great.
surprised to see the result.
That's a nice win. So on the flip side, what would you say would be sort of your biggest marketing challenge right now? What are you facing?
I've been thinking about this, and I was going to say something to the effect of content saturation in the space. And then I thought about it some more, and I realized that content saturation is not the problem. The problem is what creates content saturation. And it's this mindset of always going towards best practices. It's this mindset of well, let's do what's safe. Or it's this mindset of content's not really that important. The product is everything. So, just get some stuff out there, right? And we'll figure it out later. So I would say that this mindset of what content is and what it can do for you, and this fear of doing anything innovative or presenting ideas that could change people's minds. Look, I firmly believe that content and product um, is made to do one thing: is to make people more badass at what they do. That's essentially what it's supposed to do. So if we're trying to make people more badass, then we have to come from a place of experience, credibility. Um, we have to present new ideas, be somewhat visionary. There's a whole lot that goes into it, and it really does come down to how people see what content can do. When I worked at one startup, and the CEO was like, "I just want you to do something amazing. I don't care how long it takes. I just want you to do something amazing." And we did. I wrote an article. I call it an article because it was really an interactive piece. I worked with a dev on it. I worked with a designer on it, and we put it out there. And it got 18,000 uniques, right? Because people were talking about it. People were spreading it on their own, right? Which to me is like the ultimate, like, no channel defeats word of mouth. Word of mouth is still the king of all channels. And that's always the channel that I'm trying to hit, right? And so you can have that mindset, and then you can have the mindset of just produce more stuff. Just it's all about quantity, SEO it, give it to AI, and AI will take care of it. And it's like, no, you still need the human, you still need the human angle, you still need all those things. And you need, again, going back to what I said previously, you need a great idea. And right now we're saturating the space with so much mediocrity. And so how do we get past that? Well, we just have to be better at taking our time, coming up with big ideas, great ideas, and then putting them out there in a way that makes us look credible, right? Rather than just claiming other people's ideas and curating a bunch of great ideas and then putting it together like it's our own. Like it doesn't work that way either. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say that the biggest challenge right now is our mindset, how we look at content, the fear around it, um, this quarterly mindset. Again, it's like it's this mindset, right? That what can we do in a quarter that will get people more engaged, but not giving to content time to develop and to breathe, and through the production cycle. So
Right.
um, those are my initial thoughts. But yeah, I would
That's
say content saturation is a symptom, and then everything else is really the problem.
okay. Well, it's a good transition then to I want to talk about video. So we're doing a video interview right now, but besides this video interview, what else are you doing with video? And maybe more importantly, what would you like to be doing with video and marketing?
Well, I think, okay, so everyone should be using video. And one of the things that we were doing, so when I was at Typeform, one of the things we did was, we would produce like quick videos around the values of the company or things like that, right? But one day I went to the CEO and I was like, look, I want to start a series, right? And it's all about how to build a meaningful brand. And it's like, well, why do you want to talk about building a meaningful brand? What does that have to do with Typeform? Well, what do people love Typeform for? The design and the brand and how it makes people feel. And that was the connection there. And we did all this research and analysis, and we found that yes, that's what people want. I don't know if you're familiar with jobs to be done, the framework, but essentially we found that people were hiring Typeform to feel a certain way and to project a certain image to their customers.
Yeah.
And so we created a serialized content, about 16 episodes. Started with me interviewing Rand Fishkin, moving up the ladder, and ended with me interviewing Patagonia. Um, so to talk about the whole series. One of the other things that I was doing, so besides a serialized content piece, was taking case studies and then turning them into quick videos, right? Or turning it into a webinar, and then taking that webinar and then repurposing it into shorts to get people, the highlights of the webinar, whatever was most most impressive, I should say, yeah. And then another thing I did was I was interviewing customers, and I would take the audio from those interviews. I was asking basically about the product and things like that. So miniature, so the guts of what a case study could be. Now I would take those audio clips and then turn them into shorts, videos, and then publish them on YouTube and other platforms. So
Okay. Excellent.
yeah, and then LinkedIn posts, and things like that. So it's if I'm looking at it, I'm taking like a long form piece of content, and I'm trying to repurpose it into different different channels.
Okay. Excellent. And then the AI boogeyman that we're all talking about. How are you using AI right now for your content marketing? What's working there and what's not?
So I think AI is a great thought partner. I would not use AI for content personally, because I end up editing so much of it that I end up rewriting everything myself. Maybe it will improve, maybe it will get better, and maybe some models are at that point already. But I would say use it more as a thought partner. If you consume, if you consciously consume, and you're very mindful about what comes into your five senses, you can take you're taking some of the best ideas that are out there. Read novels, read all these other things, and then you're going to be able to apply that to any of the work that you're working on. Because right now, what's needed more than anything is just this creative mind, this way to combine different ideas. But AI is not going to do that for you. You have to go to the AI, bring your creative ideas, bring these combinations, explore these combinations with the AI. And this idea that AI hallucinates and makes things up. And I'm like, I like that. I personally, that's what I'm looking for. I want it to be as imaginative as possible, and not be factual, because I'm not worried about facts. I can probably go use Perplexity for that, or Google, or, do my own research for that. But for the most part, yeah, I would say thought partnership will probably be the primary use case I use AI for.
Interesting. And you sort of touched on this earlier about repurposing. How are you repurposing your content now, and then what's working with that and what's not?
Again, it's taking the big pieces of content, like I said, the great big ideas that you're working on, and then just like turning it into turning a case study into a LinkedIn thought leadership piece, turning the data that you pull from your product into a LinkedIn thought leadership piece, into a big ebook, into a video for the webinar, or whatever the case, right? So it's like I always try to go from the big to the small, and to me this is like the number one way to do it. And then you have to figure out what channels work best for you, right? Like you also have to lean on the strengths of your creators, right? So if your creators are really good at TikTok, then yeah, then that would be a platform for you, considering that your market is on TikTok, right? And all the rest. It's like, again, big to small. This is the way that everyone should be repurposing, first of all, and then not just like taking content and then slapping it all around all over the place, but taking the time to really make it stand out for, let's say it's a LinkedIn post, make it stand out for a LinkedIn post, make it stand out for a tweet, or, well, I don't know what they call X now,
Yeah.
what the verb is or noun is there, um but yeah, and just really taking the time to not just pump a whole lot of stuff out, but taking the time to craft it for that specific channel is like super, super important.
And then with all the content that you put out there, how are you looking at the ROI or the content performance of that?
So for a specific piece of content, unless I'm working on something big, like I mentioned earlier, like we took our time with that piece, ended up getting like a shit ton of like views and shares, and I would say like, oh man, my ultimate ROI is the one you can't measure, which is word of mouth. But the next closest thing to that would be a share, right? And I would say, like, for a specific piece of content, it would be shares, engagement, and things like that. But I would recommend not focusing on pieces of content. I would recommend focusing on measuring the performance of the channel itself. So you can produce mediocre pieces of content, and let's say you got a YouTube channel, and you throw a whole bunch of stuff in there, and one piece could be mediocre, and then five pieces could be great. I would look at the performance of the channel and how well it's driving website visits, and or trials to your platform. And I would look at the type of piece it was. Like, if it's a webinar, how well does it convert to someone to a trial, if everything is really about, if you're just really just selling your product. Um, so really it depends on the type of content, but I would also be a little bit more channel focused than content specific focus, because everyone produces a clunker from time to time. But how's your newsletter doing overall, right?
Right, right. Okay, so we've covered a few different related topics so far, and if you could condense all that into like one piece of advice for marketers today, do you have like a golden nugget that we can leave them with? Your biggest piece of marketing advice for modern marketers?
Yeah, it doesn't change. It's radical differentiation. It's radical differentiation. Like, and I have to put the radical on it now because people aren't, they don't understand the differentiation part, right? And differentiation is really just two words, right? Differentiation is difference and different. And we just have to be mindful of, like, the difference is like the positioning side of things. What does your product do that's uniquely different than everyone else, that provides a uniquely different value than everyone else? So that's the different side. The different side is how you do it. It's the brand side. So you got the positioning side, you got the brand side, you got difference, and you got different. How do you do it? How do you deliver it? How do you talk about it? Is it more entertaining? Is it more informative? Is it a little bit of everything? Like, how you deliver is really important, especially today, right? Especially when everyone's kind of like doing the same things, and this whole disease of best practices is really harming the industry. Everyone's following everyone else off the cliff, and just can't do it. But if you're coming from a place of positioning and brand, then you're really just really tuned into who you are, right? As a brand, as a person, and just coming from that place. And then the other thing would be, out of that, you should get some great big ideas, right? And what is marketing without a big idea? I really don't know anymore, right? Like, yeah, there's some boring industries and things like that, but you still have to make a difference in people's lives, and you do have to present it in a way that really resonates with them. And so I'm always looking for what's the big idea without getting into hyperbolic statements and things like that. I detest dishonest marketing. I hate it. I hate when it doesn't appear like they're being authentic, and they're just copying what's out there. So I think people are picking up more and more on that. I think the marketing performance in general has been slumping a bit, because I think people are just a little bit worn from everything that's from the same old. And I just think that we have to tune back into who we are, as marketers, as brands, and really express that difference to the world.
That's great advice. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. That's the set portion of the podcast, the set 7 questions. And now I'd like to go into a deep dive and focus a little bit more about you and your insights about what's happening in marketing, what you're focused on building right now. What's top of mind for you right now?
Top of mind for me right now is potential. What I discovered is that I think that we do not have a systematic way to get the most out of ourselves as humans, get the most out of our organizations, get the most out of society, for whatever reason. Like, there's probably a ton of systems that are out there blocking this type of thinking. But I think the problem of potential is huge. I think that the reason why a lot of organizations and people underperform is because they don't understand what it is that's inherent within them and know how to bring it out. And so this is my project right now, and this is the thing I'm focused on. A lot of crazy insights have been coming out lately.
Yeah, I'd imagine you're chipping away at this, right? So what have you kind of been learning lately? What are the baby steps that are unfolding for you?
What I learned lately is that story and life are really like, they're almost part of the same thing, right? Like, how we a story is something interesting. We tune into them. We watch teams because of them. We play games. We watch movies, and all this other stuff. And I also realize that a story is something that is not occurring all the time, unless you're thinking about your grand arc, right? Unless you're thinking about your entire story. But for the most part, what I found is that there's a correlation there. And I would even go as far to say, and I am going as far to say, when I'm putting together my big content Bible on this topic, um, that our minds and our consciousness are basically a story OS, right? And the thing that causes humans to grow is the same thing that activates a story, right? It's conflict. Conflict is what initiates the story. It gets the story off the ground. And then what keeps people engaged is the struggle the character goes through, right? And then I was doing a little more research on this, and I realized that the purpose of story, the whole reason why a story exists, is for character transformation. So the transformation of a character is the reason why we tune in. The transformation of a football team from a loser to a winner is why we pay attention, right? And so when I saw that, I realized that life and its purpose is also change and transformation. And the more we embrace conflict, the more we embrace fear, um, the more likely we're going to experience this change. You could say change, 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 and then this big transformation is on the horizon. So that's one of the things, one of the insights I've gotten. Another one of the insights is the thing that activates potential is actually a meaningful problem, because it's the same as story. You activate story through conflict, you activate potential through a meaningful problem. And so now that I've like got the guts of this formula down, I realize that the meaningful problem is not enough. What you need after the meaningful problem is holistic value, not just creating value, not just not just value creation, but holistic value creation. And then through a lot of conversations that I've had over the last decade, I realized there's only four ways to really add value in the world. And everyone's always saying, you got to create value, you got to create value. And I really never really understood what that meant. But now I do. I understand that there's four big ways. There's thousands and millions of permutations of those four ways, but these are the four primary ways. And so what I'm doing is I'm focused on meaningful problems, holistic value, how these two combine to unleash our potential as an organization and as a person, even in things like a hat. Like like I was trying all kinds of different ideas with the AI. And, it's like, okay, could we unleash potential through a brand? How would that look using this formula? How would that look doing it with a hat? How would we get more out of this hat by, not that we have to, but just that the possibilities are there. So I'm super excited about some of these insights. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been doing some real deep thinking about this. And I would be remiss if I didn't go back and ask you what the four ways of creating value are.
Uh, okay. So the first way, and I'll give you the way, and then I'll give you the super benefit of what it brings, right? The first way is connect. So if I facilitate connections, then I create value for people. And I'll give you an example. So when I first came up with this idea like 8 years ago, this is long before AI. No, it's actually more like 10 years ago. I went to a networking party and I'm like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this and I'm just going to deliver value, and I'm going to deliver value purposely in these four ways. But I'm really just going to focus on this one. I'm going to focus on connect. And my whole approach when I went to this networking party was to connect people to people. Okay. So I went in, and what I would do is talk to people and I would listen to what they were working on, and I would ask them pointed questions. And then I would go to the next person and I would do the same. And then once I heard something that complimented or supported somebody else, I'd be like, I want to introduce you to this person. Okay. And so I was doing this. I'm doing this the whole night. By the time I left, and I left early, as I was walking out the door, the guy was like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "It's time for me to go." He's like, "Man, you brought so many people to me. Like, what can I do for you?" And I knew once I saw the reciprocity coming, and I realized that, okay, this is important. So when I say connect, there's like a number of things you can facilitate connections for. So imagine you could facilitate connecting people to people. That's the most obvious one. You could also connect people to opportunities. You can also connect people to concepts or ideas that will help support them in where they want to go, right? You can also facilitate connections to resources or money or things like that. You can connect. There's some people who do this, connect people back to themselves because they've come so far away, right? You can even argue that's what I do when I help people reconnect to their brand so that they come from an authentic place. You can connect people to nature, on and on, right? Like, so these list of things that I have, and it's like, yes, there's an algorithm there that we can operate, that we can start thinking about. And just think about it yourself. Like, if you approached every day thinking, okay, I just met somebody, what can I connect them to? Right? Okay. So that's number one. The second one is entertain. And there's basically three forms of entertainment, right? Story, art, and games, right? You can throw music under art, you can do all that. But everything really ladders up to story because story is the primary, right? If we watch games because of the story, right? Story of individual players or teams or whatever. Um, Same thing with music. There's a story behind that, right? There's a story behind everything, and we just like naturally resonate with this. And so your ability to tell stories, your ability to share those stories, and to get people to um, either passively consume or participate, right? So it's like you can be a passive observer or you can be a participator. And this is like I created this framework, this matrix of like this conscious consuming as a passive way, in a passive way, or first as a participatory way, right? And it does change your experience of whatever it is, the form of art that you're trying to get people in. But obviously entertainment is a trillion dollar industry, right? And then we have all these channels like TikTok and things like that that are showing that it's exploding even more, and that everyone has this ability within them. So entertain, like how well can you tell the story? How well can you get people to change? Again, I didn't talk about the super benefit. So connect, the super benefit is speed to goal. And for entertain, the super benefit is change or transformation, which is like the purpose of story, like we talked about a second ago. The third one is organize. And I was looking deeply into this. I'm just like, yeah, the organizers of our world, the architects, the builders, the engineers, the writers, the designers, the directors of movies, just like these are the people who organize what we have. You can say that Mark Zuckerberg Mark Zuckerberg organized Facebook, right? He created the system for it, but Facebook focuses on connect, right? That's its primary benefit, right? So he's, as an entrepreneur, like organizes the great wealth builder. And I found that you can only organize four things, right? Work, space, time, and resources. That's it. And your ability to do that at a high level, not just for yourself, to create frameworks for yourself, systems for yourself, but to do that at the organizational level, at the team level, or whatever level that you need, or at the societal level, right? Creates tremendous value. And I would say organize is really like the big wealth builder out of all of them. And then finally, support. Support is intimate, it's direct, it feels personal. I could connect you to, let's say you're moving and you're moving to another city. I could connect you to my friend who's a mover and he could help you, or I could help you move myself. And you can see the direct, intimate support that I'm offering you is going to be more appreciated than the other one. So support is really the super benefit. There is like this empowerment, right? This intimacy that you get when somebody's really behind you with their time, with their energy, with their effort, with their resources. Like they're throwing their personal selves into it, and this is why it's just so valuable. um
Wow.
the super benefit for organize is leverage. So I forgot to add that in, but
Yeah.
yeah, each one has its own super benefit, each one. And you could pull them out into permutations. You can put professions under each of them. You can say like, who works at McDonald's? Oh, you're a supporter. You support the organization and making sure that the wheels turn. And this is why you could say that, oh yeah, they don't make a lot of money because they're not organizers, right? They're not managers. They're not whatever the case, right? But there's a high level for each, right? There's a high level, there's a floor and there's a ceiling of potential for each. And this is kind of like some of the themes that I'm exploring.
Yeah, that's just such a deep and rich insight you've just provided us. I'm just so curious to get your take on one theme that's sort of come up through this conversation is the idea of authenticity when it comes to marketing, especially in B2B, can be kind of a dry space sometimes. And we have this, you've already talked about all the noise out there and the fitting in problem. So like, how do you think about authenticity and how can a organization in B2B get out there and be authentic when that's not comfortable to them? They want to be safe. They want to make sure that they're on message. But I think we both know that there's real value in getting outside of that as far as getting noticed, about connecting with people and being real. So like there's something there, but I think there's a big problem right now, especially with social media, for B2B marketers to figure out, what do I do with this idea of authenticity? And how do I
Yes.
bring it to life?
Yeah, I think that's Yeah, I'm guilty of this too. Like when I
We
first
all,
started at Typeform, I wanted everyone to be on brand.
yeah.
And I realized later it was a mistake. And I remember when I was leading the copy and story team at Typeform that I was having a conversation with one of the copywriters, and basically we were talking about this whole idea about being on brand, and I realized at that time that people had to be themselves ultimately, right? They had to understand the brand, they had to understand what it was about, they had to understand what we were trying to do. But ultimately, and what I realized is that we needed to bring out more people's personalities. And those personalities associated with the brand would be like the ultimate brand expression. So as far as this authenticity thing, it's hard because at the same time people have goals, right? They're trying to reach all these goals, and they think they have to be dishonest, honestly. Like a lot of times they think they have to be dishonest. When it comes to content, I created this framework called cred, and it's basically like we should start from a place of credibility. We shouldn't start from a place of um, trying to cover up our deficiencies, right? And there's a thing, even the most junior person can start from a place of credibility. And I mapped out these four things. It's just really four things. I can bring up the screen and I can show you. Can I share my screen here?
I don't think we're set up for that right now. We might be. I haven't done it yet on this podcast, but go for it if you want to try. Yeah, it looks
Uh,
like there's a screen share at the bottom. You can try it. Yeah.
yeah, so
Here we
here
go.
it is,
Yeah.
right? Like you're where you're coming from. You can either be a curator, you could be a reporter, you can be an expert, you could be a documentarian, right? And I think a lot of people think, well, I need subject matter expertise. I need to be the expert. No, you don't. It would be great if you started from there, but you can work your way up. So even the most junior person can work their way up from there. You can curate ideas. I've done this a lot. When you're writing a newsletter, you're basically taking the headlines of the day and you're talking about them, you're putting your opinion on them, or you're just sharing them with your audience, right? These are the most important articles you need to read, right? The reporter takes a little bit more time to gather information. They do a little bit more journalism to the process, and anyone can take on that role. It just takes a little bit more time, right? Curating is what's already out there. Reporting is taking your time, interviewing people, talking to people, putting a thesis together so that people can understand the big point that you're trying to make. And the documentarian is somebody who just goes around. You can have a camera, you can have a journal, it doesn't matter what it is, and you just document what's happening, right? And you share that with people. And all this content matters. Like we need all this type of content, right? We need the expert level content. People want to see what's behind the scenes at startups, so the documentarian can play a role. As far as like industry and things like that, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in our category, what's happening. Like you could be a reporter and you could write about it, right? You can do those things, and but you need to understand your role. I guess that's my point, right? To have this ultimate credibility, right? And obviously, each letter spells cred, so
Yeah.
that ties it up nicely. But yeah, I was thinking about this. I just want to make sure that we're starting from the right place, right? Before we produce a piece of content. And I think that when I share this with other people, they said it was super helpful, especially if they're just starting out in content.
Yeah, and that's kind of a great segue to sort of kind of a wrapping up question here about like getting started. Where should people start if they want to start embracing authenticity and they want to be breaking through the noise and getting out there? And there is some stepping outside your comfort zone when you're being authentic. Like, so where do they start? You think?
Yeah, well, you start with big ideas, right? And I've had people come to me and say, "Well, I don't know what big ideas I should have," right? And it's interesting because I have this like on the next slide, and I didn't know I was going to be showing this to you, but yeah, you start with big ideas, and the thing is you are coming at it from the perspective of your industry, your organization, your category, your product, or even personal, right? And what type of visionary content do you have for your industry? How do you see your industry? How do you see your organization? Where is it going? Like what's the future like? What's the future of your category? What's the future of your product, right? What's the future of you and your role, right? Think about that. Or more narrative based. What stories do you have to tell around your industry? What stories do you have to tell around your organization, your category, your product, your personal, right? Or what deep analysis do you have? What insights can you share with people, right? Around your industry, your organization category. Or what practical tips can you offer people, right? And around your industry, your organization category, product, or personal. So to me, there's plenty of ideas out there, but some people need a starting place, right? They need a framework, they need something to follow. And for me, this is like really good for specifically for B2B, and especially you want to come with thought leadership. You don't want to come with um, you know, following everyone else. Again, like us, I'm always hard. I'm like, best practices are terrible, but it's not true. I'm just like, I'm being hyperbolic, but they don't lead to anything extraordinary, right? They don't lead to anything like, wow, I need to talk about that. When you're following other people, you need to figure out how you see the world, and you need to bring that to bear so that people can understand how you see the world, right? And if it's data, if it's narrative, if it's practical analysis, whatever it is, you have insights. Your company should have insights. Everyone should have insights. So if you're thinking of a place to start and to authentically start, you should ask yourself these questions and authentically answer them honestly, right? Like, just
Yeah.
answer them honestly. Like, do we have a vision of the industry? Do we have a vision of our organization? And if we don't, then let's talk about it. Let's shape one, and then switch to the documentarian and document all these ideas, and eventually share them with people, because everything is content in the end.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So if viewers are watching this and they're getting real value out of listening to what we've been talking about, and like who should be reaching out to you? Like, what would be the way to get in touch? What kind of people would that make sense for, based on what you're focused on right now?
I'm mentoring a lot of people right now, so yeah, just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you, especially if you're trying to figure things out, or you're trying to find that angle, or whatever it is. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I'm not out here charging people unless you're asking for consulting work. All this stuff translates too. It's not just content, it's not just articles, it's not just blogs. I write some pretty good landing pages, right? That really convert. And again, it's all tied to the narrative, it's all tied to the story, it's all tied to the brand, the thing you're specifically trying to address. So you can come to my website, paulcampillo.com. You can book a call with me. You can go to LinkedIn and just tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, I wanted to get your thoughts on, whatever it is that you're working on, this landing page or this piece of content, or we just don't know our big idea. Can you walk me through some things that, yeah, I'm happy to do it. No problem.
Awesome.
I'm working on potential. So this is like
Yeah, you're
my
working on
baby.
everything.
Yeah, it's my baby. I just want to get that off the ground and see how it does. And then I want to give the algorithm, I want to give the frameworks away for free.
That's awesome. Very generous.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I appreciate you taking the time, and yes, pretty substantial insights you've shared with us today. So thank you.